We are back and open for business here at the Big A. The Christmas break in the rearview mirror. We set our sights on 2015. It's been the first National Racing Report in quite some time. Andy Serling, Jason Blewett alongside Richard Migliore with the morning off. Regardless, we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here. And we've got a lot to talk about. 4 tracks, 11 races, really spread over about a week and a half.
And I'm glad you're here, Jason. I'm
you.
glad to be here for these races. And even though this is the end of 2014, this is really the beginning of 2015, because the horses and races we'll look at are races that could be very, very important going forward, whether they are 2-year-olds, soon to be 3-year-olds, or are 3-year-olds, soon to be 4-year-olds. Some very good horses on this show.
We'll certainly spend a lot of time at Santa Anita. They are off and running with their prestigious winter meet. They had a big crowd on opening day Friday, the day after Christmas. Couple Grade 1 stakes on that card, including Shared Belief. We've got a few from GULFSTREAM Park a bit later in the show, but we start things out in the first day, or with the first day of racing following the holiday break here at the Big A. Let's get back to Friday's 56th running of the Gravesend, $100,000 purse, a field of 5. Salute Those Amigos and Dad's Caps were the big favorites.
I tell you something, Jay. We're featuring our biggest race we've run so far this weekend. But I don't think that we're just being homers in this situation. If you believe in the buyer figures, Salute Those Amigos, who wins this race, gets a 108, Jay. That is far and away the fastest fig that was given out this weekend. This is a horse. This is a great ride and a great trip, no doubt, but this is a horse that is absolutely one of the leaders in this sprint division.
And has flourished with David Jacobson since coming to the East Coast back in the spring. Nearly a year ago, ran for $40,000 in a claiming race out at Santa Anita. Began his 4-year-old season at around 12-1. He lost that race, but he's been better than ever for quite some time, and he's been more or less an iron horse who's been accustomed to getting that sort of outside sweeping trip in the clear. Wasn't the case on Friday, and Erod Ortiz actually threads the needle and loses his whip coming up the round.
Yeah, you can watch him as he's hitting with his hand down the stretch, and obviously he saved ground, and less ground covered makes it easier for him. But a big closer like him, as you were alluding to, Jay, he's much more comfortable running outside of horses, but it didn't seem to bother him at all. And this was a really interesting race of former claimers, because a horse who was a 3-year-old stakes quality horse had fallen by the wayside, ran a claiming race. David Jacobson purchased him privately. The second finisher, Moana Rose, who's done nothing but run well for Chris Englehart. He was acclaimed by Chris for $35,000 early in his career. And Dad's Caps, who finished third, the Grade 1 winnings, Dad's Caps, he ran for a tag in his first start.
Remember seeing his owner breeder, Vincent Scuderi, the day after Dad's Caps won first time out for maiden 50 or maiden 60.
Yeah, 60 sounds
right.
Yeah,
it was towards the higher end, and we said, boy, oh boy, you got away with one there. And of course, that horse would go on to win the Grade 1 Carter. But what can you say with Salute Those Amigos, who seems to thrive on just running often?
Absolutely. And I think that's a good point. A lot of people, sometimes they like to be critical. They say horses are running too much, but then you also hear people saying horses don't run often enough. Some horses can run quite frequently. Others might need more time. As you say, Salute Those Amigos is a horse that he thrives on competition.
And a quick plug, not only has David Jacobson, as we mentioned, done an outstanding job with Salute Those Amigos, you had Erod Ortiz Jr. subbing aboard Salute Those Amigos for the injured Cornelia Velasquez. And look, Erod Ortiz, as we wind down in 2014, is past the $20 million mark in earnings.
No, Erod Ortiz he's made the jump from being a bug boy to a promising rider to being one of the top riders in the country. Obviously, his agent Steve Rushing, who had Ramon Dominguez before him, does an exceptional job. But Erod is the goods. He delivers, and he continues to get better, and he's a rider that has always learned from his mistakes.
Let's head out to the West Coast. It is the Grade 1 Malibu as we check out the opening day feature, if you will, out at Santa Anita. 3-year-olds, of course, in this 7-furlong stake, and most eyes at 2 to 5 or so on Shared Belief.
I think this is a very interesting race to discuss, and it was run just an hour after the BREA, which we'll show next. That was a race that featured a very fast pace that took its toll on the leaders, and it was slower late. This race was very slow late, and it was slow early, excuse me, and fast late. I wonder if Joel Rosario maybe gave up a little bit of the advantage that he had with Chi2 when he cruised off that easy lead, and he kind of took him in hand. And in doing so, he allowed a horse that's more of a router, shared belief turning back, he allowed him to more comfortably get in the game, and I think that might have helped him.
You think so? Because I still think he wasn't in a great spot from the get-go where he's racing in between horses,
right.
And he's never really able to settle and shut down turning back to 7 furlongs.
I'm not going to argue that having the horse outside of him works in his favor. You're absolutely right in there. But I just wonder if the fact that they went so slow early made it easier for him to be sort of in the race much more competitively. Now, they sped it up quite a bit in the second quarter, and they continued on with good fractions finishing. Ultimately, though, Jay, I think you have to say that Shared Belief had a very good trip.
He had a good trip, and this was a workmanlike effort. We've seen this horse be pretty dazzling and brilliant at times. Friday at Santa Anita, not the story. Gamely, he was game and winning, but, you know, was narrowly pressed to outrun a 72-to-1 shot for Mark Cassie in Conquest Two-Step, who was down inside.
Right. I don't think anybody is confusing Conquest Two-Step with a legitimate Grade 1 type horse. Now, listen, he improved here, and maybe he has a right to move forward and show that this was no fluke, and in fact, it was a better performance than some of us think it was. And it was, you know, people saying, well, it was his first starts in the Breeders' Cup. Well, pretty much everybody in this race had last raced on Breeders' Cup weekend. Right. So he wasn't, you know, he didn't have a disadvantage from that. He's turning back. Well, in my opinion, I think a horse like him is supposed to run very well turning back. So I discount that a bit. We know Shared Belief is a very, very good horse. He's in the top 99, you know, 1/100th of a percentile of his generation. A lot of people want to say he's the best horse in the country. I just don't see how you can say that considering what Bayern has accomplished, what California Chrome has accomplished, what Tonalist has accomplished, even a Wicked Strong. I think he belongs in the conversation, but as of now, he hasn't proven himself, especially on dirt courses, to be the best horse in the country. He'll get a chance to do it. He's an excellent, big talent. How good he is on dirt, though, I think, Jay, that's a question.
You do bring up a great point with the dirt, because his best races and his most high-profile wins, if you will, have come on synthetic tracks. And you look, he's got a dirt win in the Los Alamitos Derby against 6 horses at 3-5. He narrowly beat Fedbiz by a neck. I get he was carried wide in the Awesome again. Right, it wasn't the easiest of trips. Exactly, and he wins that race by a neck. And then he sloughed at the start of the Breeders' Cup Classic, and he runs 4th. I can give him an excuse, but there's no denying this horse's best efforts up until now have been on synth.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the really unfortunate things about what happened in the Breeders' Cup. You just wish. You want to see the best horses on the biggest stage have their best chance to show their true talents. And I don't think that it's fair to say Shared Belief had that opportunity on Breeders' Cup Day. And that is the most unfortunate thing about what happened at the start of that Breeders' Cup. And we'll never know if he just wasn't good enough. Maybe he was going to be 4th anyway. We'll never know that. But fortunately, he'll get a chance this year to show what he can do.
And it does seem, as you brought up, soon-to-be 4-year-olds, I mean, a very solid 3-year-old class. I mean, all those horses are coming back to run in 2015. And I would say, no matter how you feel, where Bayern sits, California Chrome, Tonalist, even Shared Belief, the margin between all 4 or 5 of those names, it's very, very small.
No, I agree. It does feel like on any given day, any of those horses could be victorious. And let's hope that it's not all about avoiding each other and dancing around and finding little spots to run in, and we'll all just hook up in the Breeders' Cup. Let's see these horses hook up on the racetrack 3-4 times this year and give a horse a chance to have a bad day and come back and show it was a bad day. It's a very exciting time right now. And as you say, Jason, there's a number of excellent horses out there.
Well said. Let's get out to the La Brea. Another Grade 1 3-year-old fillies. Most eyes, in fact, almost every eye in the joint on Taurus, who was purchased for $2.3 million at Keeneland in November. She didn't get off all that alertly from the rail.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of an illusion because it's that chute, but she did break about a half step slowly. It did her no favors. I tell you something, Jay, she is fast and she is good. Unfortunately, she exits this race with a non-displaced condylar fracture. Hopefully, she'll be back relatively soon. She disappointed in losing here. She lost to a very improbable horse. But I'm not sure she lost a lot of luster in losing. This was a monster pace, a pace that had him going almost a second and a half faster through the half mile than we saw in the Malibu.
And she ran terrific, and it was only in the latter stages, I mean, right down towards the wire, that she started to get a bit leg weary. I don't think she lost any luster in this race. I'm a Taurus fan. We wish her a speedy recovery and hope to see her the second half of 2015 because she is a big talent.
No, I'm with you, Jay. You don't like to see horses like this get injured, and you want to see them on the racetrack and strutting their stuff. And she got no favors by the rail because it affected her break a little bit. It made her have to go very fast. And yes, this race was almost 2 seconds slower than the Malibu, and that is a bit of a concern. concern, but the fact that she went so much faster early mitigates that quite a bit. And I think from a pace figure standpoint, she didn't run that much worse than Shared Belief did, and that's a feather in her cap going 7. You don't know if the injury affected her. It doesn't feel like it did. She's just a very good filly, win or lose.
Now, Jerry Hollendorfer wins the Grade 1 Malibu. He also gets the upset win with Sam's sister here in the La Brea with a Kentucky-bred filly by brother Derek out of an Include Dam, who's now won 4 or 5 starts. I kind of like the less than fashionable brother Derek, who, of course, in his day of running on the racetrack, did some nice things out in Southern California.
Oh, yeah, he was a good horse. And you like these horses, and you have to like horses with these lesser pedigrees, and you have to give some love to Sam's sister. Listen, she's a lightly raced horse. I think this was just her 5th start.
Yep.
So maybe she has a right to step forward and show she belongs in the division. Right now, you don't say it's a fluke, but she's going to have to step forward and do it again. But still, a big win for her.
Unbeaten in a pair of starts on the dirt. Elvis Trujillo, by the way, the winning rider of Sam's sisters. We check out another stake on the Friday card and the first ever Grade 2 victory for the victorious trainer of Alert Bay in the Mathis Brothers Mile Stakes.
I didn't think that Heart to Heart, who was surprising to me, 2-1 favorite here, lost a lot in defeat and finishing 4th because he was forced to run through reasonable fractions in this race, and it took a toll. This was a blanket finish, and it felt like Trips sort of played a role. You got the 12 horse in some traffic, and boy, you had half the field or more across the wire.
But Tyler Bayes in the pink, I mean, just rode perfectly here aboard Alert Bay in a race on the turf to boot and an evenly matched field where it came down to a blanket crush down towards the wire. Saving ground worked out. You got that textbook ride pretty much in the pocket, angling into the 3-path or so for Alert Bay, who again went out for trainer Blaine Wright, who won his first ever Grade 2. Congratulations to him with this gelding by City Zip.
No, I think you said it all, Jay. You're absolutely right. This was a sensational ride by Taylor Bayes, and it absolutely made the difference, especially in such a close race. Home Run Kitten gave up a little more ground to that horse, and that's one of the reasons he couldn't get by him.
Some big names, some big stakes on the Saturday card at Santa Anita. We'll talk about it after this quick rest on MSG+. You're watching the National Racing Report, and we've got some turf coming your way. Welcome back to the Racing Report. Let's get on to Saturday's Robert J. Frankel Stakes out at Santa Anita, of course, named for the late, great Hall of Fame trainer Bobby Frankel, who we still think of often, and maybe it is fitting we've got a foreign-bred turf filly, bred in Britain, in fact, Lady Pimpernel, who wins the Frankel Stakes, given his success with Euro Shippers.
And a perfect ride by Victor Espinosa. He was last around the turn, essentially last coming the stretch. He saved all the ground. He angled out sweetly. We don't even see her in the picture yet, but you're going to see Lady Pimpernel, part of a big day for trainer Carla Gaines, swoop by them all and get all the money in here. A couple of horses, one in particular we've seen here, Lady of Gold between horses. I got to tell you, I don't want to jump on the Knock and Kenta Sormo bandwagon because he's a fabulous rider when he's got his head in the game, but he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt anymore if he stands up before the wire. And I think it's fair to argue that Lady of Gold, he stood up a few strides early, could have cost her 3rd. I watched the head-on. I know that he felt that they were tightening it up on him, and I understand where he's coming from.
Right.
But watching the head-on, they didn't really tighten it up on him, and it might have cost her 3rd. But Lady Pimpernel, a perfect ride, makes a big difference in a blanket finish.
As we get on to another winner in just a second for trainer Carla Gaines on Saturday at Santa Anita, after we look at the Midnight Lute Stakes, in which this was supposed to be the winning coronation for Secret Circle, who was 1-5, dropping out of a second in the Cigar Mile. Of course, a former Breeders' Cup Sprint winner, and he was just completely on E at 1-5.
I agree. I mean, you don't like the spot he's in, sort of between horses a little bit. The horse in front of him's drifting, but he's struggling out there, and he never was competitive at all at 1-5, creating some big show payouts. Listen, he's obviously proven that he's a better horse than the ones he ran against in his good day. He is coming off of a Gold Rail trip, though, when he was second in our Cigar Mile. He never got on track, and with all due respect to Distinctive Passion, who put it together here for Mike Smith, and another big win for Mike Smith, this got a buyer figure of 96, so it was not a particularly fast race from a speed figure standpoint. Secret Circle in losing is the biggest story, Jay.
Absolutely. We hope he's okay. I mean, he's a horse that's had some lengthy layoffs and issues, and staying around on a regular basis has not been a trait that Secret Circle has had ever since his 2-year-old season. Won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Sprint, which is no longer run, and I mean, it's been nothing but lengthy layoffs since then, with a horse who, you know, when he's on his game and he's healthy, he's a wonderful racehorse.
I agree. And I think he's the kind of horse you got to give credit to Bob Baffert, Will, because he's doing what's right by the horse, obviously not running. I'm sure he and the connections would like to run him and be ringing the cash register. But the fact that he's been able to bring him off these long layoffs and get such good performances out of him, whether winning the Breeders' Cup or finishing close in there, running second Cigar Mile, I think it's a tribute to the job that Bob has done and the patience he's had with the horses. You're right, has a ton of talent, but clearly a lot of issues.
Jeff Bondy, by the way, the winning trainer of Distinctive Passion, is a 4-year-old by With Distinction, as we get on to a 2-year-old winner by Temple City, who turned quite a few heads, winning the Eddie Logan Stakes on Saturday out at Santa Anita for trainer Carla Gaines.
I got to tell you, Jay, this is my kind of horse. A horse that can run fast early and run fast late. He's coming out of a maiden win that I thought was better than it looks. The horse he dueled with finished 11th that day. The horses involved in this pace, finished absolutely nowhere. He completely broke this race open with this move. He's going easily, and he smothers this field. The third-place finisher, beaten 6 1/4 lengths, was third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Race. This horse, Bolo, I think he's the star of the weekend.
2 for 3 by Temple City, who's had a breakout season as a freshman stallion. He's number 5 as we look at this pull-away move. I mean, look at this horse. You just don't see horses, 2-year-olds or otherwise, win on the grass like Bolo is doing right now.
I'm sorry Richie's not here to see this horse. You know, I mean, this is a happy horse running away from those horses in the stretch. I don't blame the connections. They haven't said anything, but you got to figure they're probably going to go for the temptation and see, well, is he a dirt horse, and try him in one of the stakes.
I can't blame them for that.
No, why shouldn't they? They're not missing any big turf spots by doing that. I hope it works out for him, because I'll tell you one thing, if he's as good in the dirt as he is in the turf, he's a major, major Triple Crown type contender. But if it doesn't work out, they go back to the turf. You know, that Belmont Derby on our Stars and Stripe card looks pretty good. This is a serious racehorse.
On a year where we'll have some serious stakes on this circuit, of course, the Belmont Park, Spring, Summer, and Saratoga stake schedules were announced late last week, and those are up for your viewing pleasure at NYRA.com. Big days, big races, and we're looking forward to it.
I want to see Bolo in either the Belmont Stakes or the Belmont Derby. He belongs in one of them. Let's hope he continues on and does well. This is a very exciting prospect.
And not to belabor the point, young sire Temple City, who himself is son of Dynaformer, he's number 5 on the freshman stallions list regarding number of wins. We saw his progeny like Saratoga Heater and Startup Nation do pretty well upstate, both New York breds at the Spa.
And it's hard to imagine he's been being bred to the most fashionable of mares, and he's having this tremendous start. It's going to make him a fashionable sire. He'll get some better mares going forward. It's great to see him moving forward for Dynaformer. The son of Dynaformer, and of course Dynaformer left us, but he left an indelible mark on horse racing, and Temple City seems poised to continue.
And he'll be standing for 12-5 at Spendthrift Farm in 2015. As we get to Bob Baffert, can you believe it? This has been a show almost devoted entirely to Southern California so far, and Bob Baffert has not won a stakes. That will end here with last Saturday's, December 20th, Los Alamitos Futurity with the unbeaten Dortmund.
You know, I just think, Jay, this was a very, very important race to show, because it's dealing with horses as Dortmund, who ridiculously was 9-1 in the future wagering in California, in Churchill a few weeks ago. But these are horses right now, and Firing Line and Mr. Z as well, that are all horses being talked about, rightfully so, as Kentucky Derby prospects. You watch Dortmund, you see those colors, and you think, of course, of Bayern. How good is he, Jay, and was it a racetrack that wasn't conducive to his running style?
Maybe, and I don't watch a lot of races from Los Al, and, I mean, chasing 3 to 4 wide throughout, I'm not sure if that's the trip you really want to pull there, but he showed some gameness and some determination, and you've really had it all with the horse who's only run 3 times and was an easy blowout winner of his first 2. At least he showed some guts here, running by horses that had a bit more seasoning than him.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's not getting there at all, and as you say, at least he did get there by the shortest of noses. I'm on the fence here. I mean, I think it's the right time to be at least a big horse too. And you know, those turns probably don't help Los Al. And look at him; he is a one big horse compared to those. But you know, you're not supposed to get overly excited by these kind of horses, as I've been gushing about Bolo a few seconds ago. He's on the turf. I don't have to be the same way. But you're supposed to realize that Dortmund, as well as Firing Line and Fairly Mr. Z, are all horses that have a right to be part of the Kentucky Derby discussion right now. I wouldn't take 9-1 on any of them, but Dortmund certainly belongs in the conversation.
We love the conversation. We love the discussion. We just hope they all stay healthy.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest, I think that is the biggest factor going forward, and we hope to see all those horses running in 2015, among them Mr. Z, who is making career start number 8 on the year for D. Wayne. As we look ahead, Gulfstream Park, Turf, Dirt. Stay tuned on the Racing Report. Back at the Big A, of course, the brainchild of famed racetrack architect Arthur Froelich back in the late 50s, and we're still going strong a half a century later here at the Big A, a building, in fact, that has never looked so good.
No, it's great around here at Aqueduct, and there's no better place to watch races if you like to watch races live. The sight lines at Aqueduct are non-paralleled. It's a terrific place to come for the day. I know that people like to dump on Aqueduct, but they're wrong. It's an easy trip out on the A train. I make it every single day. Come out and visit us here. If nothing else, you can see Jason.
And we'll get back, and please come out and see me. I love seeing people here at the Big A. And look, the
You're
place,
far nicer than I am.
Place has been, well, we know that. That's a 1 to 20 shot, and it's not hard. But the place was rocking over the last few days when we got back from that Christmas break. We'll have the calendar here for a $5 price over the next few days through New Year's Day. We'll have the Affectionately for fillies and mares, a couple of New York bred stakes, in fact, on New Year's Eve. The Alex M. Robin, that stake for the state-bred 3-year-old fillies, that came up very deep.
No, I agree. That filly stake, whose name unfortunately escapes us right now, I think a new race, a great idea. That came up terrific.
Yep.
Those are on December 31st, and we start the new year off in a big way. First of all, we've got double Grade 1 winner Belle Gallanty running in the Affectionately on New Year's Day. What better way to start off the year? And then that Jerome. We will promote our racing here in New York. We are homers, but I'll tell you something. No problem promoting the Jerome. This race is coming up very solid. You've got El Kabir, who comes off a big race at Churchill Downs, and at this point is a legitimate Triple Crown contender, running against Classy Class, who was chasing outside against the Gold Rail on Cigar Mile Day in our Remsen. There's some talent in that field. I was looking over the noms and the horses that might run. That's going to be a good race.
Well, it's a point race for the Kentucky Derby. Why not for a big person? Just keep in mind, looking ahead to Saturday, January 3rd, this coming Saturday, first race post will be 12:25 right here at the Big A.
Good to know.
All right.
I'll be here early.
Let's move on, as will I. Let's move on to the action at Gulfstream. We've got one pick 3 remaining on the show, all of them from the Gulf. Saturday's Mr. Prospector Stakes with Speechify, who, you know, being candid about it, he's not beating a superstar field of sprinters. This horse is pretty nice, though.
He's a very nice horse, and apparently he's a horse who's had plenty of issues, and Ralph Nix, his trainer, I think a real under-the-radar trainer that does a good job when he gets the opportunity, has done an exceptional job keeping this horse on the racetrack. He gets a flawless ride from Paco Lopez, gets an absolutely perfect trip, and he does what he has to do. As you say, I don't think anybody's saying, well, he's a favorite for the Breeders' Cup Sprint, but right now he's doing the right things and getting it done.
It's good to see him healthy. He had that condylar fracture as well, ending his 3-year-old season. He has to actually exist on a liquid diet because of a former esophagus problem. And Ralph Nix's crew has done an outstanding job with this 4-year-old son of Harlan's Holiday for Team Valor, who did get a 102 buyer in the victory. At least he got a triple-digit fig.
No, he's a good horse, and as you say, Ralph Nix, I mean, they and the people who work with him have overcome a lot of obstacles, and they've gotten this horse to the races, and he's running very, very well.
Let's move on to a couple of turf stakes. Long-time fixtures at Calder from the early to mid-'70s with both the La Previante and the McKnight. They are now obviously run at Gulfstream Park, and we'll look at Christophe Command, who runs 1-2 in the La Previante first.
I'm so old, Jason. I remember when La Previante was running in the early 70s, and this race, as you say, a story of history. This race, it's nice to see that Gulfstream's running 2 races that were important parts of the Calder Racing Series and running them under their names. I like to see that. Irish Mission, she's a terrific horse. She had a wide trip in here. She overcame it. She grinds out the victory. Once again, slow pace, bunched field, but Irish Mission gets it done. She's a nice horse.
Real nice horse, and this is likely her final start. Christophe Command actually noted after the race she might run once more, but she'll be bred in 2015. She's got a big pedigree by Giants Causeway out of Misty Mission, one of these Samson farmed bred horses who's now in the care of owner Robert Evans, and John Velasquez aboard a mare that was keeping very good company, having run in the Rodeo Drive and the BC Filly Mare Turf.
And there's something cool about seeing Christophe win a race for the connections of Tonalist this late in the year, capping off what was a great year, not just, of course, for those connections and winning with Tonalist, but for Christophe as well. I mean, we take for granted having him in New York, that we know he's a top horseman that does very well. He's in a lot of our stake races. But this, especially with the win, the Triple Crown race, the Belmont Stakes, this was a real breakout year for Christophe. A good guy, a terrific trainer.
Who's no longer, whether you agreed with it or not, pigeonholed as just a turf trainer. I mean, that label that he had incorrectly placed upon him, I mean, that's gone up in smoke with the job he's done with Tonalist.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a question. I think a lot of the horses that you get, I mean, Christophe's going to get a lot of Europeans, so of course he's going to have a lot of turf horses, and he is a trainer that's thinking turf, but a good trainer is a good trainer. Graham Motion has a lot of turf horses. I think he won a big race or two with the Animal Kingdom on surfaces other than dirt. Give somebody an opportunity with a good horse, they can win with him on turf and dirt. People think of Dale Romans as a dirt trainer. He's had a lot of dirt success. He's had a lot of turf success as well.
And it was great to see John Velasquez in fine form aboard Irish Mission in deep stretch, getting the win, the Hall of Fame rider, who this coming March will close in on 25 years from his first American victory right here at Aqueduct in March of 1990.
You know, it's getting close for you where you're getting old, too, because you were around for some of these milestones. Yep. With me, it's all over. It's finished for me.
Right, you're an old man.
But with you, you know, I used to think you were young, but suddenly you were around for all these milestones. You'll be as old as me one of these days.
I'm hot on your heels. I still remember watching Johnny V win his first ever Grade 1 aboard Turk Passer in the 1995 Joe Hurst Turf Classic Invitational. First Grade 1 of many.
I want to say that Tony Margata and that crew had him at that point in his career, but and Joe Petruccion's involved in those horses as well. But I think I feel like Steve Placeris had Turk Passer earlier
at one time,
yeah.
Right? Because Scotty had him later in his career.
Yeah.
Long-winded turf horse who could carry his speed quite a long ways, and a son of Turco, man. As we have one more for you on the show, it is Saturday's W.L. McKnight Handicap from Gulfstream Park, and you talked about Gulfstream running these long-time fixtures at Calder. They got 14 for the Philly race, 13 for this race.
No, it's a good, fun race, but once again, you can't beat Todd Pletcher. I got to tell you, if you've got 1080 on Divine Oath, congratulations. Seemed like a bit of an underlay to me. I mean, I looked at it again after the race, and I thought, I know there were no killers in here, but he was surprisingly short, wasn't he?
He's had a good 3-year-old season, but had a good season running out of town against 3-year-old restricted company at tracks like Delaware and Arlington Park, and there were some solid older horses here. I'll send it to you concerning the runner-up.
Slumber. Well, look at Slumber in the yellow silks, those Michael Dubb silks. The runner-up is in red, the 5. He comes over and cuts Slumber off. I don't know that Slumber was going anywhere, but he cut him off. And if you watch the head-on, he is drifting significantly. He is affecting Manchurian High, who's going to run 3rd, and he absolutely affected Unitarian, who before that was outside of him. He hurted those horses badly. Now, I don't have a problem if the stewards look at it and they say, well, Slumber was going backwards. This horse was going to finish 2nd. No justice is served by taking him down. I'm not going to argue with that, right. And I think that's very fair. The fact that there wasn't an inquiry in this race, and if you don't believe me, watch the head-on. There should have been an inquiry, in my opinion, against Fixador, the long shot that finished 2nd, but it didn't matter. Once again, it's just Todd Pletcher's world down at Gulfstream.
Surprise, surprise, batting above 30%. Won at least a couple races on Saturday's card at Gulfstream Park. Had a 2-year-old by Tappet named Over Control, who won easily, only got a figure 74 first time out.
Yeah, but, you know, you don't want to get too hard on horses on figures in their first starts, and we watched the race, and I'm not big on that. He could have won by a lot more. That horse could have won by more.
Well, we'll be seeing him in stakes company, I would think. Perhaps on the unit track. What's the Withers as the second leg of our...
Mike Rapoli's getting geared up to run him right away going long on the inner.
You know he loves the inner track.
Home.
Well, exactly. All right. Well, we thank you for joining us here on this edition of the National Racing Report. We'll get the MIG back in the mix the next time we're on MSG Plus, and maybe Jim Rome will join us one of these days. He's in good company with the Hall of Fame rider Mike Smith. For Andy and myself, have a good evening.